unhappy to leave his exciting gangster life to live as a boring, average schnook. So I was tempted to say...
Schnook?
Schnook, yeah.
It was a schmuck.
No, schnook.
No, schnook.
Hold on. Oh, it was schnook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Watch the Tomato Sauce Hill.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
Each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, please subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Lovecraft Country, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and have special events. We're currently playing Destiny 2, Battlefield 2042 right around the corner. Also, Back for Blood. Very excited to start on that as well. So join us at shatthemovies.com/Twitch. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, after last week's kind of love story road trip, we're going to take a turn to the dark side this week. We're all tired of our 9-to-5 jobs. We want to do something different. Maybe hijack a truck. We want to set up a flop house for our side piece and maybe go to jail. So the only way we can do that is for one of our wonderful listeners in Chicago, Sean F., when he asked us to review the 1990 biopic, Goodfellas.
They wrote in and said, "Hello, Shat the Movies crew. First off, I'd like to thank you for the hours of entertainment and discussion points your podcast has provided my wife and I on our many road trips. We don't always agree with your takes. Not sure how a pile of shit like Halloween 4 is better than Shawshank Redemption, Gene. But that's the point, I guess. To be completely honest, I chose to commission the film Goodfellas after an evening of drinking, not long after my 41st birthday, as a gift to myself for my 42nd birthday. I don't remember the first time I saw this movie, but I have been a huge fan ever since my first viewing. It's one of the handful of movies that I'll stop to watch, no matter where it is in the movie, and even if it's on AMC and it's been edited for sensitive audiences. The opening, the soundtrack, the characters that seem to be written for these actors, overall, it's just a great film. I go so far as to say it's Martin Scorsese's best. Even better than Godfather 2, Gene. Wink, wink. This film actually makes me sorry for younger viewers that only know Robert De Niro from the Meet the Parents franchise or crap like War with Grandpa. Not to mention the influence that this film has had on The Sopranos. Not sure that show ever gets made without this look at the life of a mobster. I do ask two favors while reviewing this film. One, that it is viewed on HBO Max or some other streaming service so it's not edited. And two, remember that it is set in a period before social justice warriors and wokeness. I like to say happy birthday to my lovely wife, Tracy, as her birthday will be shortly after the release of this episode. I love you. You're the best. Thank you again for all the joy you bring to all of us listeners and movie nerds. Cheers, Sean F. in Chicago.
Goodfellas is a 1990 biopic directed by Martin Scorsese and an adaptation of a 1985 nonfiction book, Wiseguy, by Goodfellas co-writer Nicholas Pileggi. Starring Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco, and Paul Sorvino, the film narrates the rise and fall of mob associate Henry Hill and his friends and family from 1955 to 1980. Goodfellas was made on a budget of $25 million and grossed $47 million. The film was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, with Pesci winning for Best Supporting Actor. The film won 5 awards from the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, including Best Film and Best Director. The critical consensus on Rotten Tomatoes calls it arguably the high point of Martin Scorsese's career. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. All I got to say before we get started is that Goodfellas is not Godfather 2. Martin Scorsese isn't Francis Ford Coppola. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that I really loved this movie, but I didn't really remember the details of it. This one kind of runs together for me, especially now that I remember that Joe Pesci is in it, because the mix of his character here, Casino, and even like Lethal Weapon, Joe Pesci, they all kind of run together a bit. But I love a gangster film. This is a genre that I really, really enjoy. I think that mobster movies and mobster shows like The Sopranos are fantastic. And I agree that this is one of the best. So it was kind of nice to go back and revisit it and try to orient it with those others and remember what was so good about it this time around.
I enjoy these movies, but the 90s and the 80s even was full of them. And I get them mixed up because a lot of them shared the same cast. You have A Bronx Tale, Casino, Heat, Donnie Brasco. You have Carlito's Way, Goodfellas, Scarface in the 80s. They've all become a big mashup of one big crime movie. In this, spoiler alert, when Tommy gets whacked when he's getting made, I kept saying, fuck, where's the scene in the cornfield where he gets beat up and then buried? And then I'm like, oh, okay, different movie. That's Casino. So I do not remember the first time that I saw this, but after this rewatch, I think my internal rankings of these movies have become much clearer, and I've realized which are the good and which are the bad.
Well, Sean, you should know that as far as notes go, we're very heavy on this one. So we're going to cut through the crap and get straight to the trailer.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hey, Mom, what do you think?
You look like a gangster.
I know I'd go.
By the time I grew up, there was $30 billion a year in cargo moving through Idlewild Airport. And believe me, we tried to steal every bit of it.
What do you do?
I'm in construction.
He's not Jewish.
Mazel tov.
For most of the guys, killings got to be accepted.
Hey, Henry, here's an arm. Very funny, guys. Here's a leg. Here's a wing. What do you like, the leg or the wing?
For us, to live any other way was nuts. And we were treated like movie stars with muscle. We had it all just for the asking.
It's gonna be a good summer.
It was a glorious time.
In a world that's powered by violence, on the streets where the violence.
In 1955, a young Henry Hill gravitates toward the mafia presence in Brooklyn. He begins working for Paulie Cicero and his associates, Jimmy Conway, an Irish-American truck hijacker, and Tommy DeVito, a fellow juvenile delinquent. The three associates spend most of their nights in the 1960s at the Copacabana nightclub, carousing with women. Henry starts dating Karen Friedman, who is initially troubled by Henry's criminal activities, but is eventually seduced by his glamorous lifestyle and marries him.
Holy shit, guys. This opening, I had completely forgotten how brutal it was. And I know that Goodfellas has a reputation for being a fairly violent film. I remember being young because I didn't see this when I was a kid. I don't think I saw this for the first time until around probably college. But I remember the talk that my parents kind of did after going to see it, where they were like, this was a violent movie. Like, this was a gory film. And it happens from the jump. I mean, not only do you get Joe Pesci and you get De Niro, you get this overkill where he's stabbing him with this giant knife and then he's shooting him. And you realize from the start that this movie is not going to play around. It sets the stage that this is going to be a violent story. It's going to show these people for who and what they are. And immediately I went, oh, this is The Sopranos. Like, it's immediate from the beginning of this movie that everything about that show was influenced by this film, because you've got wise guys here versus these mafia men in The Godfather. There is a big difference between the mobsters in those two movies. And Tony Soprano would get whacked by Michael Corleone in like a heartbeat, but he would fit in perfectly here with Tommy and with Paulie and with all of them. So I absolutely was blown away by the opening and was like, okay, here we go.
And the normal formula is you see the movie start off like a fairy tale, right? The kid like gets accepted. They start working their way up through the ranks, or they're already a made man and they're building their little empire. And things are always good until they're not good. The insidiousness sort of appears drip by drip as the facade falls away. Goodfellas knows that we know that formula. And so they flip it around on us. I thought it was a really powerful way to do it. And one of my favorite things about this scene that you mentioned, Ash, is that you see Joe Pesci with that giant kitchen knife. You see Robert De Niro, he's sleeping in the passenger seat. You're like, why are these guys like this? Why does that guy have a giant knife on a hit? And why is this guy sleeping? And you have to wait till like halfway through the movie to figure that out. And it all comes together and it makes it so much better.
We never see in Scarface Tony like being a regular dude. We never see him like grocery shopping. We never see him like doing the dishes. Here they mix and match. They're relaxed because this is just an everyday thing. They can kind of bullshit. Hey, did we get a flat tire? What are we doing? And we get to meet this crew that is just so colorful. We get to see all of them. And they all got great nicknames. There's Jimmy and Tommy, of course. There's Anthony Stabile, Frankie Carbone. Then there's Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy, and his guys, Frankie the Wop and Freddie the Nose. And then there's Pete the Killer, who is Sally Balls' brother. Then there's Nick Eyes and Mickey Franchise and the Jimmy Two-Time. Within 30 seconds, they have effectively laid out the landscape of the family. There is no wasting time, and we're feeling like we're a member of the crew.
There's this scene where Henry gets pinched for selling stolen cigarettes to workers, right? So he thinks he's in deep shit. He thinks he's going to be in trouble with the crime family for getting caught. But he goes to court. Jimmy shows up, Robert De Niro. He praises him for staying loyal, for keeping his mouth shut, makes it kind of a learning moment. And then they open the door and they walk into the foyer of the courthouse. And all the guys from the family are there. Everybody's cheering for him. Even Paulie, like even the guy that's the top dog, everybody's there talking about how, he popped his cherry and how proud they were of him. And I got that feeling. I mean, I felt it. The movie was so effective in doing that. How fucking cool that would be for all these guys, all these characters to accept you. And you question, like, how could any young man resist that?
Hell yeah.
Right. And when the narration backs that up, because you've got Henry narrating over the entire thing. And there's that one scene where because this movie takes a lot of time with exposition. So if you're somebody who likes exposition, this is the movie for you, because we go from Henry being a young kid to being, the mid 20s ish, which is where, we pick up with him in adulthood. But as a young kid, he tells that story about the time that the kids at his school carried his groceries home because of the type of respect that they had for him. And it's got to feel really badass to have that kind of respect, especially when you have the kind of parents that they also show you that he has. He's got a dad who's an absolute asshole to him, who absolutely doesn't really care much about him, who's super unhappy in his own life. And then he's found all of these other father figures. And so it's an incredibly addictive lifestyle. And I think the way that Scorsese does this here, it kind of shows you why it's so addictive from the very beginning.
Yeah, and that's just masterful directing. I mean, you also look at the dissonance between that narration and what's actually happening on screen. Scorsese is doing that with great effect. They're talking about the way they see themselves. And the way we're told what this crime family does for money is they provide protection for people who can't go to the cops, which now more than ever I appreciate. But these guys own the cops and they pay them off with stolen goods. Like in the action that we're actually seeing on screen, there is wealth, but it's acquired through basic like thuggery. Like they are parasites. They are stealing from people, and that's where they get their wealth, even if they see themselves providing some sort of service.
Yeah, and Gene, you talk about how this lifestyle is attractive, how you can see you'd be seduced by it. No shot in this entire movie, captures that feeling than the Copacabana one shot. It is one of the most memorable scenes that everybody knows of this film. From the moment that Henry gets out of his car, he walks across, goes downstairs, cuts through the kitchen, comes up into the entrance, and they put the table right in front of the stage. There is 0 cuts. Now, that is a difficult thing to do. It took them 8 tries to get this done correctly, because you have a 1,000 moving pieces. Now, subsequently, they've done some longer ones. Like I remember in True Detective, there was a famous one where they're raiding like a drug house. So they've done it better now. But in the 90s, this is an incredible shot. And it symbolizes this transition of Henry's life. He started out as this kid, and now you see he is somebody. He's got this relationship with Karen. He's showing off. And Scorsese said in an interview, he said, this is the seduction of Karen, but it's also showing that this is the gangster life seduction of Henry.
And it's not just this scene, Big D. Throughout the movie, one of the things that struck me, just like in The Color of Money, is how much camera motion there is. Scorsese has a camera moving all over this motherfucker. And like you said, this isn't 2021 where you can kind of have drones or have CGI. This is 1990. It takes incredible coordination and technical skill to get these things right. And I think the older I get, the more I appreciate the effort that's been put into this. I don't know that I got that when I was a teenager, but now when I'm watching the movie, I'm like, holy shit, man. It's so dynamic, the amount of motion that's going on.
So, Gene, I was watching it this time, trying to find one person in the background that fucked up. Someone who kind of moved out of the way of the camera, somebody who either was just pretending to chop onions, and I could not find a single one. To get this entire shot is truly masterful filmmaking.
Even more impressive and important to the film than that one is the scene at the wedding where it's like that money line and Karen is sitting there and she's receiving envelope after envelope after envelope. And then the way it's cut where they would show how many people were left and then go back to her and she's kissing all of them. I think that it's so overwhelming in its repetition there. And it mirrors that opening because it's a repetition of a person, right, as he walks through. And then she has her own introduction to the family in that way, which is so different than Henry's, because Henry's is all about like, this is like the royalty of the family that he's trying to enter into. And then with Karen, you've got her realization of like the reality of the family that she's entering into. And you feel how overwhelming that is and how she would both be really frightened, but seduced by that world in a different way than Henry. I thought it was just really, really smart. And we would be remiss to not talk about one of the most famous things from this movie, which is Ray Liotta's laugh, especially in the scene with Joe Pesci, because there's that meme with him in that scene. And there's that gif that, flies around the internet all the time with him laughing like he does. And it is so iconic. And it is such a ridiculous laughter that it's almost like when you watch it, I have to imagine that the first time you saw it, it had to be like, I don't really know how to take this. Like, is this dude just a really bad actor? Or is this what Martin Scorsese told him to do? Because it's insane the way that he looks. He looks absolutely unhinged. And I feel almost like I couldn't help but think about Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker movie that he did a couple of years ago. That laughter had to be like inspired by how weird and off-putting this one was. I hope Ray Liotta doesn't laugh like that in real life is all I'm going to say, because that would be so obnoxious.
I hate to break it to you, but that's actually how he laughs.
No, it's not.
Also, his smile in this movie, every time he smiles, I'm like, don't ever do that again.
Right.
Don't.
Just don't
like,
be
I'm,
happy.
I'm giving you a wipe just for that smile. But no, that's actually, I've seen him laugh in other stuff. That is how he actually laughs.
I'm not going to believe
Oh,
it.
it's so bad.
That laugh came out of fear. He's trying to read the room just like we are. Tommy's a sick fuck. So you're trying to realize, is Tommy joking? Is Tommy going to kill me? Is Tommy dangerous? And I owe Joe Pesci a genuine apology. I've made fun of him because of his small stature. I said to my cousin Vinny, who the hell is going to be scared of him at a bar or in a casino? Who's really going to worry about this fucking dude? Here, he is genuinely frightening. His size, I think, adds to the fact that he's unstable. He feels like I have to prove myself in every moment, every situation. He shoots poor fucking Spider just because he thinks that, the other guys are laughing at him because of Spider's joke. And I realized my issue isn't Joe Pesci. I think it was more Nicky in Casino that didn't do the job this film does.
I think part of it might be that Joe Pesci gets less scary the older he gets. Because like Home Alone Joe Pesci, terrifying.
Yeah, 95.
Lethal Weapon Joe Pesci, not terrifying.
Yeah.
In 1970, Billy Batts of the Gambino crime family repeatedly insults Tommy at a nightclub owned by Henry, so they kill him and bury the body in upstate New York. 6 months later, Jimmy learns that the burial site is slated for development, so they relocate the decomposing corpse. In 1974, Henry moves in with his mistress Janice, but Paulie insists that he should return to Karen after collecting a debt from a gambler in Tampa. Jimmy and Henry are arrested after being turned in by the gambler's sister, and they receive 10-year prison sentences. Henry has drugs smuggled in by Karen and sells them to a fellow inmate from Pittsburgh.
I had forgotten how much voiceover there is in this film. I remembered it at the beginning, and I thought it was going to be like what a lot of movies like this are, where the exposition is just where the voiceover is. But that is not the case. This whole movie is narrated, and I had also forgotten that sometimes it jumps to other people, most specifically Karen. And I don't know about you guys, but about an hour in, I was like, okay, like, is it going to is going to stop anytime soon, because I much prefer to watch what happens, not listen to the retelling of what's happening or like the reasoning behind some things that are like really obvious. I think the most egregious example of that is when Henry says, killing became normal to some of the guys. And like, we've been seeing them kill people the whole movie. So like, yeah, I get the point. It's supposed to feel conversational. It's supposed to feel intimate. It's based on this book that was written, but I felt like it kind of dated the movie. It made it feel very early 90s, and it made it less enjoyable for me. And this is where it stopped being a perfect film for me, was when it just started grating on me that they were still having insight into Henry's head.
If you need to tell us something as an audience, you're not doing your job with the film. And usually I'm pretty strict with that. But here in the beginning, the voiceover, when it's young Henry, we need to understand what's going through his head. How did he get to the taxi stand? Understand why he's so excited, how he feels that he wants to be part of this community, part of something bigger, Gene, part of this family. You know, the movie's 2.5 hours long. I think it remains pretty tight, so I'm willing to give it some leeway here on some exposition to save time. I felt it was necessary, and it didn't offend me too much.
I felt like it was Ray Liotta was in the recording booth and he's just doing the narration, and like Lorraine Bracco just showed up and she's like, hey, what's going on in here? I'm going to help out too. It's like, no, you go outside. We only need one narrator. But the cool thing about Goodfellas is it sometimes feels like Henry is narrating in real time. And I like that. Like, he doesn't know what's about to happen. Like when Morris gets whacked, he's like, he didn't know how close he came to getting killed. And you're like, oh, so he survives. Like, no, kept it fresh.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of times Karen seemed surprised, like the mic was there. It was like a reality show interview, like after like an eviction or after getting voted off the island, where she was just really into it. Whereas I enjoyed Henry's because it was his internal dialogue. There is always a first half, like a rise, where everything's cool, everything's fun, then a second half fall. The first half of this is building up. It's a rags to riches. We're getting to see Henry, his humble beginnings. He's making some money. He's getting some influence, and it looks fun. I can see why you'd want to do it. I mean, influence and power, it's attractive. Karen admits most girls would run away if a boyfriend handed them a bloody gun, but I got to say, I'm attracted to him. It's always a clear moment. Like, you remember in Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is a feel-good, uplifting, really, really raucous party until the New Year's Eve suicide murder. And then it is downhill. Here, I felt it again. Once Spider gets shot in the foot, Henry goes home to Karen. They immediately fight. That's when you start going, okay, maybe it's not all good. Maybe the life that they're leading isn't something I'd want to do.
Are you fucking nuts? Is your shit's going wrong detector broken, buddy? Like, the downfall is there the whole time. You think it starts with Spider getting shot in the foot?
Yeah.
Billy Batts gets whacked for making a comment. Now they got to dump his fucking body. They don't know what to do with it. They just take it upstate, dump it along. They're still stabbing him in the, the fucking trunk.
No.
You don't think that, oh shit, like things might be deteriorating here. Or the fact that they take a guy who treats them like royalty. They stay in his bar every night drinking. He goes to Polly for help. They end up bankrupting the guy and burning down his bar for insurance money. To me, very early on in the movie, like, something is very wrong here.
No.
Well, and I think Gene is absolutely right, because the downfall is evident, not just in like those obvious things, but also in like they constantly are showcasing that there's this poorly veiled looming crisis that's always on the horizon. And I think Karen kind of spells that out for us when she's at that party, and you get these flashes of blue makeup, and like they're really shitty, like poorly decorated homes. And you know that these guys want to belong in a certain world, but they just don't. They don't belong in that rich world. They don't belong in the world that they come from. So they're in like this weird world of their own. And that's why Karen and Henry talk about all that isolation, because they're on the verge of society in isolation, and they're always on the edge of destruction because of it. And I have to say, the fact that from the get-go you can feel how close they are to failure, that's my favorite part of the entire movie, because it isn't like, hey, there's this perfect facade, look at how beautiful their homes are, look at, Corleone, the Godfather here, eating oranges with his grandchildren running around him in some idyllic like villa. Instead, you see that they have shitty houses and shitty cars. And when one goes into jail, then all of a sudden they lose everything and they have nothing. And I think it's pretty brilliant.
This family structure is fucked up. It is awful. It was painful to watch. And it's rare that we see this. in films, how it affects the kids. When Karen is downstairs in Janice's apartment and she's banging on the button, screaming, "Whore! There's a whore in here! I'm gonna tell everybody of a whore living here." Or when Karen, goes into jail and she sees Janice's name in the logs, she's doing everything she can to hold this family together. She's smuggling this load of meats and cheeses and drugs into jail. And then she sees that, and it's ironic to me because the mob always preaches family first. Respect your mother, respect your wife. But those are the ones who suffer the most.
By the way, ladies, far be it from me to give you any advice in life, but if there is a guy who is clearly cheating on you, this is perfectly okay to do. Let me just tell you that right now, because I think that a lot of times guys rely on the fact that someone won't do the shit like this because they might look quote unquote crazy. Get loose with that shit. Call him out in public. Call him out in front of everybody. Scream at him and fucking make his mistress uncomfortable. A+ action, Karen. Way to go.
How about revenge porn, Gene? Can you release a picture of his junk?
Ooh. Yeah, you shouldn't have sent it to you in the first place.
Okay. Gene officially endorses revenge porn.
I'm just very uncomfortable with nudity on any sort of electronic communication. Draw a sketch of your dick and then burn it immediately.
Yeah, no dick has ever looked good in a picture. But I do think that one of the things that this movie is famous for is kind of what you're talking about, Big D, which is it makes this life look awful. Karen at that party that I was talking about a second ago, she in her voiceover talks about how their skin is bad. They wear too much makeup. Their husbands cheat. They swing from a lot to a little, and it's just rough. I know that our commissioner talked about The Sopranos, and I think it's hard to separate the two because this feels like a prequel to The Sopranos. And, Karen is a precursor to Carmela. And there's all these characters that eventually would influence every mob movie that would come after this one. And I think that's your biggest difference here is that The Godfather makes them look clever, smart,
Yes.
and cool. Al Pacino is a fucking beast and he looks good in a suit and he looks like he's in power and wealthy and owns the world. And you put him next to Paulie, and it just shows what it's really like, that this world is not that coolness. It's a lot of backstabbing. It's a lot of murder. It's a lot of cruelty. And it's just a lot of outright idiocy.
By far, my favorite scene in this movie is when Tommy, Jimmy, and Henry are driving Billy's body upstate in the trunk of Henry's car. Yes. And they stop by Tommy's mom's house because they need a shovel.
Yeah.
They wake her up in the middle of the night. Tommy's covered in blood. By the way, that the mom is Catherine Scorsese. So it's Martin Scorsese's mom. And she basically improvised the scene. But she wakes up and what does she do? She insists that they sit and she's going to make them a meal, right? Because that's my mom to this day. Mm-hmm. If me and the King Bee, well, maybe not the King Bee, she would just kick him out immediately. If me and Big D and Ash, if we showed up covered in blood at my mom's house, she'd probably be like, okay, well, let's get you some clean clothes and get you something to eat. Yeah. Like that's what fucking moms do. But she's making them a meal. Tommy's explaining terribly that they hit a deer. And he's like, what do they call it? Like the paw? The paw?
Yeah, the paw instead of the hoof.
Henry's just keeping quiet. Like he wants to get the fuck out of there. Billy is not dead yet. He's pounding on the inside of the trunk trying to get out. And Tommy's mom's like nagging him about not getting married. I mean, this is to me the greatest scene in the movie, if not the greatest scene in any mob movie.
Gene, you're 100% correct. And yes, that was mostly improvised, like you said. They just gave the mom, hey, you haven't seen him in a while. She busts out that oil painting. And they're talking about, look, there's two dogs. They're looking, one's going east, one's going west. It is such a fucking fantastic part.
And this guy in the boat's looking at you like, what do you want from me?
Yes, so good. So good.
In 1978, Henry is paroled and expands his cocaine business against Paulie's orders. Jimmy later organizes a crew to raid a vault at John F. Kennedy International Airport, stealing $6 million in cash and jewelry. Jimmy has most of the crew murdered, while Tommy and Henry are spared. In 1979, Tommy is deceived into believing he's to become a made man and is murdered on the way to the ceremony, partly as retribution for Billy Batts' murder. So I'm not questioning the truth of Henry Hill's tale. Like this movie is loosely based on his story as expressed in Wiseguy, the book. But I just wasn't sold on Jimmy going paranoid. It's Robert De Niro. He's killing off everybody involved in this Lufthansa robbery. That just doesn't seem like a smart move. Like it would invariably draw attention to you, right? If there was a crime and you were being looked at for it, and he's telling people not to go out and buy extravagant things, but then all those people are fucking dying and he's not, you think the cops might be keyed in. It doesn't really make sense. And beyond that, like Jimmy was so level-headed the rest of the movie. He's so business focused. He's so careful. to me, it just didn't add up. And I didn't feel like it was De Niro's role. Like maybe another person cast in this role could play off that paranoia. But De Niro just seems so cool, calm, and collected that it doesn't make sense to me. And it really was the first point of the movie where I wasn't really buying it.
I think that I remember De Niro being a much bigger part of this story. And I don't know if that it wasn't his part wasn't larger or just his performance didn't stick better. I don't know what it was, but De Niro is a powerhouse. Like he's somebody that when he's in a film, it's like, holy shit, this is a Robert De Niro film. I mean, think about Cape Fear. Like he completely chews up the screen, even when like he just walks across it. There's just something about his physicality. And I think that's what was missing here is that Jimmy definitely is supposed to be a scary guy. He's supposed to look like he's frightening. He's supposed to have this physical prowess, and he just didn't. Joe Pesci at 5 feet tall was a lot more frightening than he was. And I think it started from the beginning because he's like, he couldn't have been more than, 21, 22. And De Niro's got like massive frown lines and like wrinkles all over his face. And I'm like, okay, because he looks the same at the start as he does like what's supposed to be like 20 years later.
Yeah, I think somewhere around 1970, everyone just stopped aging. Like, Paulie looks the same as he did in 1955.
Right.
So you basically had the kid versions of people, and then that was it.
Yeah.
So, Gene, I rarely question your use of words or the way you structure your sentences. You're very eloquent, but I got to call some bullshit here. The definition of paranoia is the irrational and persistent feeling that people are out to get you or that you are the subject of a persistent, intrusive attention by others. It's not irrational. They are being watched. These idiots are buying a Cadillac. They're getting a fur coat. This is not paranoia. This is called pragmatic decision making. You know these idiots are going to get you pinched. You kill them. This is the thing you do. Paranoia is Henry at the end with the helicopter. It's slightly irrational. It turns out to be correct. But here, these people are going to get you caught.
But you understand how killing them, it draws more attention than leaving them alive, right?
No, I disagree. A talking witness is more dangerous than 2 times in a freezer truck. But to what you're saying about questioning how genuine the story is, anyone who listens to Howard Stern, Henry Hill, before he passed, he always used to call into Stern from wherever he was sequestered out there in witness protection. And he was wild to the end. Crazy dude. He had the habit of embellishing stories. So I think you got to take this story with a grain of salt. Not everything happened the way it did. So his description here of Jimmy, who knows? But Henry, I'll tell you, he led an interesting life. I did find myself wondering, though, as far as paranoia goes, Gene, Karen goes to Jimmy. She needs some help. He gives her a wad of cash. He acts like he's going to help her. Then he kind of walks her out and he says, why don't you go get yourself a dress? And he kind of puts her down the street, points her to one of their storefronts where she supposedly is going to go pick out some merchandise they've stolen. She walks down there. She's high on drugs. She's paranoid. If she didn't run to the Volvo and peel out, was she going to get whacked or was this just something she had worked up?
I shit you guys not. I thought they were going to drop a piano on her. I thought that's what, I thought from off camera, she's going to be walking to go, little further, and then plonk.
Oh my God.
I didn't even think of that, man. But their performances in this film, they're dynamite. I don't think there's a weak one among the entire lot, whether you're a small character, whether you're one of the majors. But De Niro, he's a pro. And for me, my favorite scene with him in this movie is about a 30-second clip. It's the moment in the bar, Gene, the paranoia is getting to Jimmy. And he's constantly hearing about Maury fucking nagging about the money. I need my money. I need my money. And he's finally pushed Jimmy over the edge. He's been courting danger. And De Niro's just sitting there and he's smoking. And you see him, the wheels are turning. And he decides to kill Maury. At that moment, he doesn't say anything until the next scene we hear Henry says he's actually going to do it. But De Niro conveys all that thought, that thinking, the processing, the ultimate decision without saying a single word.
Yeah, and he's got the ability to make those tough decisions. I mean, that's the one thing we never see Henry do, is we don't see him get that kind of violent streak, that part of what really takes to be so successful in a business like this, which is just having like absolutely no morality at all around human life. And Henry keeps some of that. Like, I mean, he steals, like he's not like a good dude, but he's not walking around like whacking people left and right. And you've got, De Niro's character here, Jimmy, just over and over again, you can see him that he grows darker and darker the older that he gets.
Was I alone in expecting Henry to do more after that dude manhandled Karen?
Yeah.
From across the street. He walks over and he whacks the dude a bunch of times in the face with the pistol, but I was like, I thought it was going to get way worse than that. I was like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty effective. I wouldn't touch her again if that was me.
I thought he was going to kill him.
Yeah, but you can't. That's in front of the parents' house. That's as much as he could do. I thought he was going to slam his head in the hood of the Corvette, or maybe just smash the Corvette, do something with that.
I thought he'd drop a piano on him.
Jesus.
By 1980, Henry develops a drug habit and becomes a paranoid wreck. He sets up another drug deal with his Pittsburgh associates, but is arrested by narcotics agents and jailed. After bailing him out, Karen explains that she flushed $60,000 worth of cocaine down the toilet to prevent FBI agents from finding it during the raid, leaving them penniless. Feeling betrayed by Henry's drug dealing, Paulie gives him $3,200 and ends their association.
At this part of the movie, the editing kind of starts to change. And based off of how quickly the story is devolving into very bad things, the editing gets much faster and faster and faster and more frenetic. And in the beginning, with that long shot that you have about all the members and they're all in their finery, it's so slow. You know, you see this presentation of what they want the world to see them as. And then as the facade starts to kind of fade and get more weak as the movie goes on, with each crack, like the faster the editing gets. So the more dangerous the story, the more anxious we, the viewers, are by the way that it's cut. And I mean, just look at that entire scene where they whack Tommy. Like, it's so incredibly fast. You know, you are absolutely blindsided by it. And the same with the day that Henry's pinched for drugs, as he's explaining what they had to do and this and that and that. Everything is cut so frenetically that it's almost like hard to watch. And I think Scorsese is a genius in that way, because it allows you to feel the things that the voiceover is trying to tell you that they felt in the moment. It's really effective.
Yeah, I was watching the movie with one of our listeners, SF Punker, who was streaming it in the Discord, and he pointed out that this entire section of the movie feels a lot like Boogie Nights. And after hearing that, I could totally see where Boogie Nights might have gotten inspiration for those scenes, because it is that same, hyper speed presentation. Everything's cut so tightly, and you feel that tension and that anxiety building.
He always used to say, that he was out there in the streets and the job he was doing, and home was almost something separate. Here, they blur together. That final night, it is a mix of family and the crime. He's selling the guns with the silencers. He's picking up the drugs, but then he's got to pick up his brother from the hospital. And then the doctor gives him some Valium. Then he's also got to go home and prep this giant meal. He's got to get the babysitter ready to go to the airport. And then she forgets her hat and she's got to go to Rockaway. They're treating like, hey, I got to go get the Coke is the same as I got to go to the groceries. Like, everything has become a regular event to this family. And I like the way they weave that it is no longer clearly defined roles. Everything in their life has become a mess, and it is bound to fall apart.
Henry's whole reason for getting involved with the mob, his whole reason for choosing that lifestyle, was to avoid the drudgery of domestic life. It was to live beyond what everyone else in the neighborhood was doing. Mm-hmm. But as we see it falling apart, though, it's very risky to put a crying scene in a crime movie. Typically, what you'll see in these is like, it's some woman who's off to the side screaming at the guy. And the guy just leaves, and it's like, oh, that crazy woman, she's so emotional, blah, blah, blah. That's usually what you get, right? Or the family's like devastated by the choices the guy's making, but he's got to make them because crime, whatever. At 2 points in this movie, we get these incredible crying scenes, and they're not a sideshow. It is the story itself. It is front and center for you. The first one is when Tommy gets whacked. Jimmy comes unhinged, in the phone booth, and he's crying out there outside the diner. And you could really feel that rage and that pain and that helplessness coming from Jimmy. Again, De Niro, fucking pro. This guy who is powerful and a stone cold killer is absolutely rocked by this decision, because something that was at the core of him, this guy that he's known for so long, somebody he's spent so much time with, just got taken out, and he knows there's nothing he can fucking do about it. Absolutely nothing. The second one, though, is where Henry and Karen realize they have nothing left. She's flushed the drugs down the toilet. He's freaking out at her for flushing them. She's telling him, if I hadn't flushed them, they would have found the drugs, so I had to do it. They're in the corner of their bedroom, and they're just shrieking and clutching at each other and clutching at the walls. And it's a perfect illustration of the fact that you wanted to avoid domestic life, but the decisions you made actually brought you to domestic rock bottom. And what's a better depiction of rock bottom than the corner of your bedroom as a couple crying and holding each other? Like, that's it for them. Well, Henry meets Jimmy at a diner and realizes that Jimmy plans to have him and Karen killed, prompting his decision to become an informant. Henry gives sufficient testimony and evidence to have Paulie and Jimmy convicted and is later seen living in a nondescript neighborhood, unhappy to leave his exciting gangster life to live as a boring, average schnook. So I was tempted to say this movie is ahead of its time, right? It's 1990, and I'm watching this movie in 2021 going, God, this is gripping. This is exciting. This is an excellent movie. Holy shit. Was 1990 a fantastic year for film. Like 1990 gave us Jacob's Ladder, Crybaby, Total Recall, Ghost, Kindergarten Cop, which I love, Tremors, Miller's Crossing, which falls in the same genre basically, Dances with Wolves, Hunt for Red October, Joe versus the Volcano, Darkman, and of course your favorite Big D, Edward Scissorhands. To anybody out there who says that we need to move on to the 2000s because we're running out of material, no, we haven't touched half of these movies. And that's just 1990 alone.
I don't remember hating Edward Scissorhands that much. I got to go back and listen. I mean, I remember everybody trying to be so different, and I'm such a special kid, and that's what bothered me about it. But watching this, one of the things that we do when we watch a movie, we say, how does it hold up? I found myself just so unfamiliar with the amount of cash, the envelopes filled with the money, the piles of the money. When is the last time? I can't remember the last time I held a $100 bill. The last time I held a 50. I carry like zero cash in my pocket. I don't think I've had more than $100 in my pocket in probably 3 years.
When's the last time you went bar hopping?
I just use a card.
Use a card at bars?
Yes. I do.
No,
I use a card.
No,
yeah, who fucking
guys.
cares?
No.
I
Why?
open up a tab.
Because then you create a clog at the bar, and then in addition to that,
I open up a tab.
Yeah,
I know that. No, I get that. You can open up a tab and still pay with cash, though.
No, I don't ever.
But more importantly,
No.
you're clogging up the bar. Here's the deal: when you do the card at the bar, right? Is that when you're ready to leave, you got to go back to the bar and get your card back. They got to process the card. Someone's got to run it back to the fucking thing. Fuck that. Cash is the way to go. Plus, you can budget yourself, so you know when you get shithouse, the bar is never going to overcharge you on cash because you know how much you're paying right there.
Okay, these sound like gene problems. To a normal adult who's not bar hopping and worrying about clogging up the point of sale, it's easier. I'm not going into like some packed like venue that has 400 people waiting for drinks. I'm going down. We're sitting down having dinner. We're sitting at a bar. We're having.
That's not bar hopping.
That's fine.
For dinner.
Even bar hopping, you can still run a tab with a card. You do not clog anything up. They just touch it. It just goes boop.
Yes.
And it's done.
Gene, Jesus.
You don't even have to make change.
So at the end of the night, when they're like, you had 4 shots and not 2, how do you dispute that?
I say, you know what? They work really hard, so who cares?
Yeah. Or if they overcharge me like 5 shots, I say, hey, guess what, Capital One? This is a bullshit charge, or USAA.
Oh my God. Such an old man.
No, if they overcharge me.
Yeah, but like, so they charge me for an extra shot. Okay.
No, it was like this. Once we did a cruise and they double billed us on every drink. So it was like, say, $500 over for the full cruise. We could have stayed and fought it for hours on the ship. Instead, I called USAA and they go, yep, we refunded it. I was like, what? That's it? And USAA, one of the greatest things I got out of the military, if you're out there, active service, direct family member, USAA is the fucking way to go.
That and cash.
Nah,
fuck
cash.
God.
Unless you're buying drugs.
So we should talk about the elephant in the room. This movie is very long. It's 2.5 hours long. And I feel like if you have 2.5 hours to tell a story and you end up only using 5 minutes to wrap up the conviction and life thereafter, maybe you didn't manage that time very wisely. And far be it from me to tell Martin Scorsese how to make a movie. I understand that it could have been an artistic choice to illustrate how unimportant life after the mob feels. So you zip through the court, you zip through his criminal conviction, you zip through, life after and spend all your time on actual life in the mob. Personally, I would have enjoyed more time in that courtroom to feel that tension, that disgrace. You've got the opportunity there with Henry, Paulie, and Jimmy in court. Paulie, who even in the end still helped him out, who was always there for him. Putting him behind bars too, I think that you could have devoted a little more time to that and I would have appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, think about what that would have felt like, having to go in that courtroom and like rat on people that you've known since, as we learn in this movie, like since you were a kid. Like these are people who were kind of like your stand-in dads and you're fucking them over. And especially Paulie here, because you're trying to give him like the thing that he's the most afraid of. He's told you multiple times that the thing he's afraid of is dying in prison, that isn't what he wants. And that's what you're basically sentencing him to. And I just think that I would have liked to have seen like the conversations when like Paulie and Jimmy realizes that he's, ratting on them, that they're going to go to jail because of it. I would have loved to have spent less time doing coke with that girl with that terrible makeup, because that is not what people look like when they drop an 8-ball. It is not. And then spend more time with, the legal battle.
I like that Ash just outed herself on which side of the fence she lives on. Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. Ash is that loyal. She would live it to the end. I don't think at this point he's ratting. I really don't.
What?
Your loyalty sticks to a point. He was loyal until they were going to kill him. That was it.
He was loyal until it didn't serve him anymore.
Didn't serve him being dead. Yes,
he is but he's in an industry where you don't like get a gold watch and a pension. Like when you sign up to be in the mob, you're either going to die in prison, or you're going to die of old age, or you're going to die of a venereal disease, or you're going to die from your friends killing you. Like that's just like what you're signing up for.
Syphilis, Gene. That's what killed Al Capone. That's what she was saying.
I don't think he's arguing the death by STD.
I was just going to say there was an uncanny parallel between that and the pirate contract.
I would never rat on my friends.
See, I think you violated the oath of the mafia family when you're going to kill the wife too. If they were going to kill just Henry, I could see Henry taking it like a man, letting them whack him, and the family goes on. But when you're going to kill the wife and leave the kids without parents,
hot take. I'm not for killing wives and families and leaving orphans.
Yeah.
Bold stance, Big D.
Thank God we had that voiceover to tell us really profound things like killing people is bad.
Well, some people deserve it, but not wives and kids. You can't do them all. But Henry's trial, yeah, it's rushed. And the voiceover exposition, it's a bit much. But when he breaks the fourth wall, that's when I finally said, okay, they kind of lost their way here at the end. And he's telling us, he's walking off the stand telling us, I'm going to be an average nobody. The rest of my life, I'm going to be a schmook. A schnook.
He's not a schmook. What the fuck is a schmook?
It's the ghost of a schnook.
Yeah, what the fuck is a schnook anyway? It should have been
he
a
got
schnook.
Whacked and he became a schmook.
It's like a muggle when you're in the mob, a schnook.
He should have left that out. That was a bit much, and I seemed like they lost their way at the end.
I mean, when he gets up out of the chair on the witness stand and starts talking to us, I went, what? And then all of a sudden he walks out of his house, and then there's that weird thing with Joe Pesci where he's shooting in the air.
Yeah, that's
and then they go back to him. Okay. I was like, what happened, Scorsese? This is stupid.
I gotta tell you, this conversation here, this is why I always leave my wipe score blank. It just added some to my wipe score right there, Ash. You got it. I'm agreeing with you.
Wow. Well, I guess now it's time to do the wipe score. Wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie take to get our respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is doing cocaine with Debbie Mazar, goddess. And 5 wipes is being carried to your death in upstate New York in the back of Henry's car with a gut wound from a kitchen knife. Ash, we'll start with you. What's your wipe score for Goodfellas?
I mean, y'all, obviously this is a really good movie. It is. It's held up. The acting is amazing, but fuck, is it long. This is a long film. It deeply breaks my 90-minute rule. And I have to say that the voiceover, as I've already mentioned, it takes me out of it. But I do love that there are real consequences here. There's real tragedy. There's fantastic backstabbing. It's as brutal as this world really is. And I like that it's unflinching in its violence. If it weren't so violent, it wouldn't have that realism to it. And it's also, we didn't really talk about this, but it's also really beautifully shot. Like this film is shot really, really well. I have to be honest, though, and say that I prefer the Godfather movies. I think that the sequel, Godfather Part 2, and the original are perfect films. They're amazing. They are also very long before somebody writes in and says, I'm a hypocrite. They are, but they don't feel as long as this one does. I buy the allure of Michael Corleone. I buy his story, as opposed to the realism of Jimmy and Tommy and Henry. While it's more real, I prefer the fantasy. And I have to also say, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, I think that The Departed is a better movie than this. I think that it is a much better film. And I think that that film and The Godfathers are better. But this is a phenomenal gangster film. You cannot deny its influence. It's close to being perfect, but it's not perfect. So I'm saying it's one wipe.
So on the Color Money podcast, I famously called Goodfellas Godfather 2. And Ash, maybe I actually do like The Godfather 2 better than Goodfellas. I think I'm right there with you. This is a very good movie. We need to state that over and over again before people freak out. It's a very, very good movie. I love this movie. I could watch another hour of this movie with no problem. If they wanted to make it 3.5 hours, I'd be right there for it. Maybe not at my desk on Discord with SF Punker, but definitely on the sofa with a cocktail or two. I would sit down and watch this all day. The ending felt a little rushed, and honestly, Jimmy wasn't the best sort of bad guy, if that makes sense. I just feel like, look, I love De Niro, total pro. I just think Jimmy as a character didn't quite make sense to me. He felt like he didn't feel fleshed out. He didn't feel real. And while I can't say this movie is perfect, it is very close to perfect at half a wipe.
This isn't a fictitious story. This is semi-autobiographical. So you're talking about these characters like you would prefer them to be a certain way in a story that's completely made up. These are more realistic, grounded characters who aren't intimidating. Jimmy doesn't have to be intimidating. Maybe the real guy wasn't. I think the movie, I was going to go 0 wipes up until the very end. This is a good long. Ash, you have that 90-minute rule. There are certain movies that are long that don't need to be long. Heat, Casino, those are bad long.
Heat is better than this. I'm sorry.
This is a good long. This is the entire story is moving. The arc of the characters, it makes sense. But at the end, you made me realize that it's imbalanced a bit. They should have taken a little bit from the middle, like you said, a little less coke and more resolution. They should have balanced it so the end wasn't rushed and we got to see the effect it had on the characters. We saw the relationships built and over time how they grew. But the ending, we didn't get to see them dissolve and the pain that they caused. So for that, I would go lower. But Gene hates my tiny fractions. So I'm going to go 0.25 wipes, which is, I think, the only score that Gene would not lose his head about.
All right, with a quarter wipe from Big D, half wipe from me, and 1 wipe from Ash, that comes out to a total of 1.75 wipes divided by 3. It's 0.583 repeating wipes for Goodfellas.
So, Gene, with a wipe score of 0.58 wipes, that now ties this in the 23 spot with Boogie Nights and Happy Gilmore. It is slightly better than Die Hard, Groundhog's Day, Good Will Hunting, and The Fugitive.
I feel like we just woke up from a very long slumber where some other people were scoring our movies for us.
I know.
What the fuck? I gave it what? But I mean, listen, I went back and looked at when I was watching Scream. I was like, I wondered how I rated Halloween and Halloween 4. I think I gave Halloween 4 wipes, but gave Halloween 4 1 or less. I don't
you
know
just said Halloween 4 twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gave Halloween
4
wipes,
okay,
and he
gotcha.
gave Halloween 4 1 or less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
there we go.
Jesus Christ!
Wow.
We need to get off of here and go eat.
Yeah, I think it's time to wrap this one up. Big D, any voicemail or email this week?
Yes, Gene, we got a wonderful email this week from one of our listeners, Tim, and Ash, if you would do us the honors.
Absolutely. Tim says, "Hi, Gene, Ash, and Big D. This is Tim from Florida. I've been a listener for a few years and recently had a meta moment while cruising through your Little Giants review. A movie from an era of my life from which I have a not insignificant amount of nostalgia. You guys are, though you often shit on various titles, in the business of nostalgia. Listening to your reviews gives 80s, 90s kids like me a chance to revisit the films of our youth and recapture a taste of the simplicity that went along with being a kid. When a trip to the video store on a Friday night was an exciting enough prospect to be worthy of lunchroom conversation in the cafeteria. I'm going to video time tonight after school. Cool. What are you going to get? My dad said I can get Little Giants and rent Mario Kart. What? Can I come over? Yeah, have your mom call my mom when you get home and bring your extra controller. What followed was much pizza eating, movie watching, video gaming, and having the previous channel button on the remote ready to take us from Cinemax to Nick at Night should a parent come knocking after 11 p.m. Pretty sure that's how I developed my critical thinking skills. There's a slightly painful bliss in remembering those days, which is what nostalgia is all about, the sadness and the sweet. We grieve for those moments we can't get back, but we feel a deep satisfaction in revisiting them through avenues like your podcast, which brings me to my Shat the Movies meta moment, trademarked. While listening to Little Giants, I found myself feeling nostalgic for your podcast, even though it's still on. I found myself sad at the idea that there may come a day when you guys decide to hang up the headphones and put away the toilet paper. You don't know it, but you've been the soundtrack to countless late night drives, long days at work, whiskey sipping evenings, workouts at the gym, walks in the woods, and memorable times with my friends and family these last few years. I look forward to you guys dropping a new episode each week, sort of like I used to look forward to going to the video store on Friday nights as a kid. Your podcast serves as a touchstone for the years of my life I'm in right now. I have no doubt that I'll re-listen to old episodes for years to come and feel nostalgic in doing so when I remember where I was in life when I heard them the first time. Making spaghetti with friends and laughing while listening to Big D and Roger discuss the finer points of the pronunciation of Reese's Pieces during ET. Drinking bourbon around the bonfire with my dad while impersonating Big D's Johnny Dangerously Fargan Sneaky Bastages tirade. Laughing hysterically on a road trip to Ashley saying, "You have to pretend like physics don't exist" during your True Lies episode. This has become an inside joke between my friends and me. Are my brother and I knowing entirely too well what Gene was talking about when he described the 1980s cigarette and butt smell of his uncle's couch? I'm pretty sure all couches in the 80s had that particular fragrance to one degree or another. So thank you, Shat Crew, for the effort you put into this work. You have been decorating time during multiple moments of my life, which are already evolving into tomorrow's nostalgia. Know that you have brought joy, laughter, peace, and comfort to this dude's life and continue to do so every episode. All the best, Tim.
Well, thanks, Tim, so much for writing in. I admittedly got very teary-eyed the first time I read this letter and have read it about, 8 or 9 times since. But it's interesting because for us, we haven't talked about this in a while, but we used to mention it, quite a bit, was Big D and I, at least, Ash, I don't know how you feel about this, but like I can listen to a podcast episode of ours from years ago and know exactly where I was in life at that time. It really is kind of like its own little calendar that puts me in touch with different periods. I can tell listening to a pod if Big D was pissed off that day and remember probably why, or if I was distracted for whatever reason, whether I was going through a breakup. I think at least twice I recorded on the day of a breakup, which was never a good idea. So I'm glad that you had those same moments with the pod.
Yeah, and I think I have the unique experience that you two can't have, which is that I was both a listener and someone on the pod. So I have the experience that like Tim has, where before I joined you guys, like I remember my first day at a new position at the university. I listened to you guys all day because I didn't want to meet and greet the new people in the office because that's awful, right? And so I hid in the copy room and laminated and listened to y'all. And then like when I had Ellie, I had written into you guys because like I listened the entire time I was in labor. I listened to your episodes. And when she wouldn't sleep at night for the first 6 weeks, it was your episodes that I listened to. And it was like the soundtrack of like delirium and new babyhood. And then it's the same thing like once you come on, because I had COVID when I was on with you guys, and we've had multiple issues in our family and fun things and bad things. So I completely agree, Tim. And the part that I think sticks out the most to me from your letter is when you say that, the moments today are evolving into tomorrow's nostalgia. And I'm very bad about living in the moment and that whole gratitude bullshit. Like I've never been good at that. And I just want to thank you for reminding me that it's a fucking honor to record with the two of you. I love you both dearly, and I love all of our listeners. And this is just a special time in our lives. So maybe we'll quit tomorrow. Maybe it'll be 10 years from now, but I'm just for today one of those people that's going to be hashtag blessed to be part of the Shat the Movies world. Cause it's true. It's really, really, it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. It's the biggest honor is to become kind of what the podcast was about. It was about remembering the time when you were a kid and sharing that enjoyment. And the fact that you also use this as like a milestone, something that you can remember back to those moments. It's incredibly flattering. We've been through a lot together, especially this year with COVID, the lead up to it, all the different phases of life. I can remember like you said, it's tied to what was going on in my life, and that you've shared that with us, and we could be even a little part of that for you is incredibly flattering.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for commissioning Goodfellas, and thank you to all the commissioners who make Shat the Movies possible. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us like Tim did at host@shatthemovies.com or call and leave a voicemail at 914-719-SHAT. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us for the following movie.
You know who to call when you have ghosts. But who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad. What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town...
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster.
What's happening? 2 ways to kill a werewolf.
Silver bullet?
They're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there and it's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
Soon the creatures of the night shall rule the world.
Real monsters? Us? Midnight. In the world, remember? Maybe we can be like Mask Squad instead, you know. 2 mask bombs.
We got 1035. Stick back up. Hurry up.
Or Nature Squad. The book is right. Don't you see it's all true?
By midnight...
You guys!
they won't seem so young anymore. The Monster Squad.
Wolfman's got me.